Hello, everybody. So we might have some changes with audio and everything else. Since we're doing something a little bit different this time, my camera's mic is what I usually use for this stream, even though it is just the actual worst. And that is now located for my shoulder a little bit. Instead of where I usually have it on my monitor. So the audio quality might be different. The video is obviously very different. So yeah, not super sure what to expect today. But we will just go with what we have here. I do apologize for the delay getting set up here. Physically setting this up was a little bit more intense than I expected. And I just have been having a bit of illness today that I've been fighting, so this is probably for the best that we keep this a little shorter than normal, unfortunately. So what we're going to do... That's not right. Hang on a second, you're supposed to be on the other audio device and also playing completely different music. So, what we're doing today, let's try that again, is we're going to be painting this guy here. This is the Cragheart from Gloomhaven. He's going to be our project for the evening. And I'm going to try and keep him roughly here so you can actually see what I'm doing. This is the furthest I can get my camera zoomed in, and it's not going to get any physically closer to this. Pretty much no matter what I do. So hopefully, this will turn out okay. As far as our lovely thematic music, I'm currently working on that, but my computer's being a little bit difficult because it's kind of getting a little bit crappy these days. And it looks like we also have some lovely encoding lag, which I hope will not be a significant issue in the long term, but we will see. I will deal with that as best I can. Okay, now, are you on the right audio device? No. Yes. Okay. So we're going to listen to some Vardruna, which is, I believe, Finnish? Oh my. Also got my paint supplies basically in my lap here. So these are the colors we're using. As you can see, I've invested heavily in the game color line of Vallejo model paints. And so we'll be mostly using that. So, for starters, I'm also going to be using this lovely stuff, which is a 40% slow dry, 10% flow aid, and 50% distilled water mix, which is an excellent dilution agent, which I've had excellent results with up to this point. And I'm going to be using a dry palette today because I'm a bit of a scrub and can't be bothered to get a wet palette set up because I don't know what happened to the Tupperware I was using for it. Never mind, I just found it because I'm an idiot. That's fine. Either way, we're out of parchment paper, so you know. Alright, so the Cragheart is a rock dude. He is mostly earth tones, as you would imagine, from a guy made out of rocks. Like lots of warm yellow browns with some gold armor and this crazy like turquoise-looking belt. And then he's got this impacted spot on his chest, which you can't really see super well. But this bit right here, which in his official art is just jet black with like little shiny bits. So I'm thinking it's maybe like coal And I'm gonna, sorry, I'm just adjusting my magnifier here. It's gonna be a lot of that, probably. a lot of just adjusting this setup, because it's thrown together a little hastily, I'll be honest. And also, as a disclaimer, I am in no way a pro. So if you're here looking for painting tips, I will tell you what I know, and I will tell you that I don't know very much. Let me get my brushes out here. So we are going to start with, where's he gone? Our number 3 Torre brush. Let's get the brush soap out of there. Start us off right. And let's see, we'll want to start with base coating in a dark brown. So we're going to start with this charred brown, 72.045 of the game color line. Hashtag not a sponsor. So yeah, we're going to start off super dark with this, but it's going to be fairly thin. Just doing 3 drops of that. And we're going to do about 2, maybe 3 drops of our dilution mix, which is usually, you'll kind of average like 2 drops to 1. So we'll go 3 drops there. Since we want this particular paint to be thinner than normal on our base coat, I'm going to be doing it 1-to-1 mix instead of a 2-to-1 mix of paint to thinner. And I've got it all over myself. Great. Good start. So we'll mix that up real quick. This lovely grimy color. That's about right. Clean myself off. I don't like having my hands all sticky. Alright, so got our brush all loaded up. We're just gonna basically slather this over most of his body. We're going to avoid the parts with the armor and jewelry, but otherwise kind of hit everything. And the technique usually used, or the technique that I've personally found effective is the clothing technique, which is basically you put the paint on in the order that you put on your clothes. So hit all of the underneath areas, paint socks first before shoes, for example. And that way, if you make a mistake in something overlaying it, then you can easily do the top layers without messing up the bottom layers. But on the other hand, if you make a mistake on the bottom layers after doing the top, then it is dramatically harder to fix. So this general approach neatly avoids that. Just getting his leg done here. So what I've done to these already is a technique called blackwashing. Although I haven't done it properly, I deliberately chose to use a gray primer instead of a black primer. So the shadows are going to be a little bit less intense than they would be if you did this the real way, and the colors are generally going to be a little bit more muted, which is intentional, since Gloomhaven is very much that type of environment, that kind of game. I probably don't have enough blue tack on the bottom of this, so I might have to keep adjusting it with my hand. Just attaching it to this pill bottle that I'm using as a handle. I'll probably have to just keep pressing down on the base periodically, just because I did this super jankily. This is very much a do what I say, not what I do, because I've done a bunch of this in a very amateurish way, even though I kind of sort of know better. Yeah, slathering away, Scarlet. Just covering him in charred brown pretty indiscriminately. Again, we're going to try and avoid mostly hitting any of the raised portions. We might go back over the bits with his clothing and especially his armor later on with some white or possibly black, depending on where we decide we want the gold to stand out more. But for right now, yeah, just a nice hefty base coat of this ugly brown color that's going to seep into all of the crevices. It's almost thin to the consistency of a wash. It's not quite there, but it is quite enough to make him very brown. Once this layer is done, I think what we'll want to do is give it an ink wash with the Umbra wash and then go back over it with some like slightly lighter blended colors, a little bit at a time. I'm going to try and take my time with these. Usually I'm a little bit more, I don't know if rushed is the right word, but lazy for sure. I am absolutely a lazy painter most of the time, but I'm trying to do this a little bit nicer, and I feel like doing it for an audience is a good enough excuse. And again, this particular coat, not only is it okay if it's not super fancy or clean, but that's actually sort of an advantage because it means that I have an excuse to paint over the parts that I don't like anyway. I don't have to feel like I put any work into this. Let's get this arm and then both hands, and then I think we're done with that coat, and we'll mix up another color while it's drying. So, yeah, alright, get the underarm done. It's a little bit of a weird crevice in there, the way that it's sculpted. I mean, I suppose that's not weird actually, but it's a little funky to paint. And again, the reason that we've got this so thin, even though normally you'd thin it to about twice this consistency, is that we don't want this to be completely opaque. We don't want to completely cover over the pre-shading that we did when I blackwashed it. For clarity, that technique is, in a nutshell, when you prime with a dark color, I definitely need to fix that blue tack. It's where you prime with a very dark color, usually black, and then you dry brush the entire model, especially the highlights, with a lighter color, typically white, resulting in, and you can see it a little bit better on some of these other figures, resulting in something like this. This color down here is the primer, but all of this up here, let's see if we can get it to properly focus in. You can see where all of the highlighted, or the raised portions are highlighted, simulating the effect of a light source, even before actually doing any of the painting at all. So we'll clean our brush out here just a little bit. Obviously we'll be keeping that color, this dilution mix that I've made up is very good at keeping paints usable even on a dry palette, so it's excellent for covering for my poor technique. It's also good for improving the actual flow of the paint. Which one of these had issues? Just take the two that didn't want to sit properly and double them up. It was a mind thief. Yeah. Beg pardon for the delay. We're waiting on it to dry anyway, so I don't think it's too much of a disaster that we're taking this a little slower than normal. Or not normal, because I've never done this on stream before, but than I had intended. Oh, nice big blob of blue tack on there. bit better. Okay, so that's a start. Should make a little bit of room to set him while I'm working on other stuff. Okay, so while he dries, let's get some of this wash shaken up. Annoying slurp noises, perfect, perfect. We'll get a little bit of that in our... Whoa, okay, more than a little bit. It jumped out at me. Get that a little bit onto our palette. And how are we doing on this? So he's going to still be a little bit shiny even as he's drying. Even though normally the undiluted paint would be a little bit more flat by now. So that does make it a little bit hard to tell exactly when it's dried out completely. You can kind of see him a little bit shiny there. Doesn't show up super well on camera. But anyway, that's how he's looking at the moment. Very angry. The chat is ready to accept messages. Why is my chat add-in reloaded? Stupid thing. Well, hopefully that means I won't miss any messages this time around. So this wash is actually a lighter color than what we've already painted him over with. So some of the darker color will stay in the crevices, but it'll also be partially covered up by this lighter wash, which is good because the colors that we're going for are actually sort of like middle, between middle gray and like a middle gray brown yellow mix. It's not going to actually stay this dark. This is mostly just so that the crevices and crags in our crag heart will look good after they get washed. So let's start tossing some of that on. And hopefully that won't just completely ruin what I've already done. That'll be fine. Just gonna apply it pretty heavily over everything that we've done so far. We're going to keep it off of the gold portions again, because I don't want to have to paint over those too much. Because of the way that this model is sculpted, we're going to see a lot of areas that normally on other models we might kind of have in the interim portions of the painting process, like the limbs. And we're going to do this pretty early because all of his clothing is sort of strapped on to various portions rather than worn. So there aren't really any layers to that or anything. It's just kind of all on the very outside, and almost none of it is overlapping except for this loincloth and his belt. So those are the portions that we're going to need to do that with. And we are going to wash the loincloth, just to get that started. We're probably going to want to go over that again later, with a similar technique after we've got it painted up with the what's it called, the gray that we're going to put onto it. But for right now, this is fine. In fact, this is probably unnecessary at this point, but I am absolutely a noob, so I'm gonna make some silly decisions, and you guys can laugh at me later. It'll be fine. If anybody actually watches the VOD for this, laugh in the comments. We will not be doing any rebasing for these minis, at least not in the scope of this streaming project, because that is not something I really know how to do, and therefore I can't show it off. But you can see sort of what the wash is doing a little bit more clearly in that loincloth area. and good laugh. Okay. So I'm pretty happy with most of where this wash is sitting. Give him a little bit more just along this underside. That part didn't really get any. Alright, so yeah, he's still looking super gross right now. So we'll mix up a lighter brown and start getting this into some kind of coherent condition. Here's how he's looking. There's the camera. And of course the lighting on that end isn't really amazing. Come on. White balance better, buddy. Let's see, you know what? There's actually a way to do this a little bit better. There you go, white balance this. Yes, it is boot. Nope, that's not happening. Okay. Guess we're just not gonna have this properly white balanced. That's fine. Alright. We got some progress. Alright, so while we're waiting for that wash to dry fully, let's get some leather brown and some beastie brown both going. These guys. So, for context, the mini that we're painting tonight is the Savas Cragheart, which is indeed named Boot in our current campaign. Boot is pretty much our damage-dealing character. I keep thinking he's going to be the tank, and then he dies nearly as fast as my Spellweaver. Not as fast, not even close, but compared to the rest of the party, he does have a certain habit of finding himself nearly as dead as me. The aforementioned Spellweaver here is Giannis. We also have Carrig Ann Bismonet, the scoundrel. And, of course, who could forget Sunshine Dope Chillin' Dragstrip Twirlshy Quattril Tinkerer. That is actually the name that character has been given. Because sometimes I don't know what planet I live on, I guess. Yeah, it was interesting getting that character figured out. And the only reason that I remember that name is because I keep having to write it down, which is ridiculous. Okay, so we'll get our thinning mix going on these two new colors. Let's get that all stirred in. And what we're going to see tonight is you guys are going to get to see me learn about blending in real time, because I have no idea what I'm doing. I have painted a crap load of miniatures, but they were also really crappy and also spaceships, so this kind of thing is a bit new. And Jession is the main reason that Battle Stations is on my poll. Silent stream? Yeah, no, not a silent stream. No, not so much. I imagine that might have been a little bit startling. Alright, Boot, how are we doing? Some parts of you are dry-ish. Well, okay, let's kill some time and mix another color. No, not a silent stream. I'm trying to be instructional here. Come on. Give me some kind of credit. Okay, 3 drops of black, 2 drops of thinner. The drops coming out of this dropper bottle are a bit smaller than the drops that come out of the Vallejo color bottles. Not by a ton, but enough that it's not just an exact one-to-one sort of a thing. Ooh, excuse me. Alright, so this black that we're using here is to paint up the crevasse where Boots' heart belongs. And then we're going to go back over it with a little bit of our charred brown from earlier. Let's have these pointed at me so I can remember what colors I'm using. Alright, that's just about dry. Not quite dry, but close enough. I'm going to just overpaint this a little bit, because we will be dry brushing the crap out of the stuff on top, and at least some of this won't matter. However, some of the wash did get deposited there. It is not fully dry, and I'm doing this completely wrong, but that's fine. No one cares. It's okay, no one's watching. For all the self-confidence I have in this process. Let's get that to flow down everywhere we want it. That's a sound. And then we'll just wick off some of that stuff that got where we did not want it. Easy peasy. So the process we're using here to remove the paint that we didn't want is we're basically just taking a tiny bit of water in the brush and then rubbing the slightly wet brush over the parts of the model that we don't want that black pigment to sit on as it dries. Now there is still going to be some of the pigment, so those areas are currently a little bit darker than they're meant to stay, but we will be changing that shortly. And we will also toss a little bit of black right into his mouth. Just while we're at it. I don't know if the contrast will show up on this camera, but you can at least kind of see his little chest cavity. It'll show up significantly better once we've got the outside painted on a little bit better. Right now it is, of course, nearly as dark, and therefore is not going to show up very well. Let's see, what do we want to do next? Let's go for... we're going to do a little bit of the Beastie Brown, and we're going to dry brush, but we're going to use this brush, even though you're not generally going to want to do dry brushing this way. It's not going to be a super dry brush, it's going to be fairly wet as this technique goes. But basically this is just so that we don't completely cover over all those crevices that we worked on up to this point. We're going to be fairly hasty about this, since we do want it to get into some of those areas, just not all. basically, we're just going to do a bunch of layers of various colors of brown. And eventually we're going to have something pretty close to the art. We also need to make sure to go across the grain as much as possible. Otherwise, we will fill in the areas that we've already worked on. That is not at all what we want. So, yeah, we're getting some of these details in. It's looking a little nicer. A little bit more like himself. Each brush load of paint, of course, is not going very far, simply because we're taking most of the paint out of it each time. There's a slight mold line here that I didn't spot before I started painting. So that's something I think we're just going to have to live with. There's not really going to be any getting rid of that. Okay. Probably going to have to clean out the brush pretty soon, because doing this is a little bit taxing for it. Doesn't keep its shape very well afterwards. Okay, so there's, you can see the difference between the two legs already. It's progress. Let's see, is there any angle that this gets any light on it at all? When it's close enough that you can see anything. I feel like I should have like a piece of black paper or something that I hold up behind this, so that we can actually see it properly. So, alright, going on this other leg here. We're just going to use the same technique of a dry-ish brush. Rather a wet dry brush or a dry wet brush. Whatever you prefer. Now, these painting streams, for me, are kind of serving a double purpose. One, it's an excuse to do more different kinds of content, which is part of what this stream is about. I just want to kind of goof off and do whatever feels fun. And this is something that I've wanted to do for a while. Like, really for quite a while. But also, it gets me to actually finish these projects. Or at the very least, work on them. Because I want to be productive with these sorts of things, and sometimes I have a hard time doing that by myself. But if I can at least feel like I'm doing it for someone or something, then I can kind of get myself to do it a little bit more thoroughly and more easily. That was probably a little too much paint there, but that's okay. It's thin enough that it's not going to completely cover what's under it, so we'll just get a little bit of color variation there. Okay, let's start on this hand up here. Start doing that area. Do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do. And I think I just realized that I forgot to change my social alert, so it still says that I'm playing Humble Originals. But that is okay, because it's way too late to do anything about that. Whoops. in my defense, I was a little bit preoccupied and I don't have a stream manager. It's just me. To be fair, if I did have a stream manager, I'd probably have a bigger audience. No offense, guys. So, in relation to the music that we're listening to here, it is part of a musical project by the band Verdruna, who are, again, I'm not exactly certain, but I think they're Finnish. They might just be broadly Norwegian, or not broadly, but from Norway. And it's part of a project that they did based on classical runic magic. They kind of did a musical piece for each of the runes in that tradition, trying to kind of capture the emotion. Stream manager would be, I mean, it is a potentially multi-purpose term, but I've mostly seen it used in the context of somebody who, like, basically takes care of all of the technical and social stuff while the actual streamer does the stream. So, like, real-time video editing, transferring between scenes in whatever recording software. So, like, if you need a special effect or a sound effect or whatever else, it's a bit like the manager on a radio show, just basically somebody who sits in the other room and takes care of things as they go. Which, truthfully, I would kind of like to be that for somebody, and I would also kind of like somebody to be that for me, but it's something that I have no skill whatsoever in, and also something that would cost a lot of money, so I'd have to actually hire someone. And as much as I would like to give somebody money to do something like that for me, I don't have the money to give. So here I am doing it all myself. But that's okay. That's really only applicable to fairly large streams with fairly large audiences. And even my wildest dreams have not quite pushed me to the point of thinking that I could have that sort of an audience. I mean, it's kind of a hope. Yeah, it really is only for, like, big streams. So, like, I found out that this was a thing while watching Yogscast streams, just because they occasionally will reach out to their stream manager who is off screen and ask him to do stuff. So it's kind of like, oh, hey, I guess that's a thing people do. So something that I'm considering for this piece, and for this project in general, is to use the Army Painter's Strong Tone inks. I don't really have any experience with those, so it's a little bit iffy. I don't know how long they take to dry, for example, and if it takes too long, then we might just be doing that all night instead of actually painting. So if I do use that, I'll probably do that close to whenever I'm gonna end, although obviously what I'm actually doing might might take precedence. Let's see, let's get this head area done up. We'll do this a little bit heavier. He's gonna have a little bit more paint up here than on the rest of his body. So I want that to contrast with the gaping hole in his chest. I'm going to try not to get it into the aforementioned gaping hole too much, because I don't want to cover up any of that black. This is thin enough that it could potentially get in there if I'm not careful. just a little bit more for that side of his head. Okay, so he's starting to look like himself a little bit. His chest still doesn't look like it's completely dry, so I'm a little bit hesitant to go in there with the brush again. But here's what we got so far. Starting to get more apparent what's where. Truthfully, other than just kind of keeping me paying attention to what I'm doing, is most of what I'd have use for a stream manager for. Because I am way too scatterbrained otherwise. Does this show up at all? Is this any more visible? Even if it's teeny tiny? It's most of my light's over to the left. Yeah, the camera just has a really hard time focusing at that distance, and I don't have anywhere else to put it. So, I'll see if I can fix that for future streams, but I think right now we might just be stuck with it. Alright, let's see if we can get this how we want it. Start getting this black overpaint cleared up. It's going to be a little difficult to completely clean this up, just because I'm not sure exactly where I want the edge to be between the black and everything else. But I definitely want to do this primarily with dry brushing type techniques, because that, we're absolutely sure, is what's going to get this looking the way I want it to be. Yeah, there we go, that's progress. Okay. The legs are getting about where I want them. At least for this color. So I think that bodes well for the rest of his body. Yeah, the back ate a little bit of the shadowing, but I think that is actually just fine. I don't have any issue with that. Let's clean the brush. And I'm actually going to use some of this brush cleaner to keep the pigment from sticking too badly, even though that's definitely overkill for a project this small. I just like my brushes soaped, that's all. Alright. So that's all clear. Got all that pigment out of there, and the bristles are in good shape. So, back to our friend Boot. So, we're just about ready to go for the next color, but unfortunately, he is still rather wet. Which sucks a little bit, because I can't do a whole lot until he isn't. So, that's the kind of the other edge to this two-edged sword of using this dilution mix, because it tends very strongly to extend the working time of your paints, which is great for stuff like blending, for using a dry palette, period. Like, everything about the actual techniques is way better with this stuff than without. However, it does make the paint on the model take absolutely forever to dry. So, that's why the wash dried so much faster than everything else, because I did not dilute that, and it's actually water-based. Just like all of the rest of the acrylics here. So, let's start thinking about other areas on the model. I think let's start in with the turquoise on his belt. We're going to use foul green for that. It's 72.025 in the game color line. Pardon the shaking noise. Actually, it looks like my compressor might have caught it. 1, 2 drops, so that is absolutely plenty. And we're going to want this thick compared to the other colors, because we don't want... There's not really any detail to maintain in there. The art for him has mostly like like a scaled texture there, or like tiling, I guess. But the model, like, I am looking at this through my magnifier, and I can't see any texture in there at all. So we don't have to be super cautious. And of course the gold will be going on over the outside of this, so we don't have to worry too much about getting the edges of it exactly right. We just have to avoid getting it onto his main body. It should be pretty easy. So get that in there. This color's a little bit lighter than I had intended, but I don't think that's terrible in terms of how this is going to look overall. I think that's actually pretty okay. And particularly if we use the Army Painter ink on this area, which I don't think I'll probably want to do, then it's mostly just going to be darkened pretty heavily. Now in his art, the inset portion of the belt where all of this turquoise is going to be all the way around, not just on either side. I'm going to do the ends first, and then cover the actual belt afterwards. We may want to go over this color again, I'm not sure. There's not really anything to highlight, so it's gonna, if anything, it's just gonna be like basically for good measure to make sure that it's fully opaque. This belt is going to be a little tricky, the side portions, because they are underneath his arms. And that area is a little hard to get to, but I think we'll be okay, provided adequate caution. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Does seem to be a bubble in part of the paint, which a little frustrating, but I think it'll be alright. One more little bit of this, and then we can move on to waiting for paint to dry again. We may want to go for his loincloth next. The other paint is still not dry at that stage. But that's really the only other thing waiting we can do straight away. The gold we don't want to touch until pretty much the last thing. Just because that's going to be really hard to get at any of the stuff underneath it once it's done. And it borders every other color on here, just about. So there's his ludicrously garish belt, step 1. The legs are starting to dry up. It's almost ready. And for those, the rest of that, I don't want to use an actual dry brush. What have I done with my super crappy one? Because I think that's the one I want to use for this. Dry brush, where did I put you? Don't mind my noises. RP55. Yeah, we'll just use this guy. It's not the one I was looking for, but that'll do. And while it may not be super crappy, it is pretty crappy. So, story here. Very small. Focus in, camera. So you can see that the bristles up there are really torn up. The story there is that I didn't really realize that cleaning bristles this way was a problem, like with your fingernail pressed in. Like it was one of those things that I just didn't really think all the way through. Until it was way too late. So I ruined an entire set of brushes that way, and that was cool. But I have since learned my lesson. I know better. So he's going to be a little bit yellowy. And we're actually going to do a proper dry brush this time. Not like a wet-ish brush, like we did before. But since this brush is a little bit larger, we're going to have to be a little bit careful about getting into the crevices without getting anywhere that we're not supposed to be. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Solid start on this step, I'd say. Do want a little bit more on the side in front of his foot. Now, the nice thing about dry brushing is that you don't really have to wait too much for it to dry, because it's kind of halfway dry by the time it hits the model. So that's pleasant. Alright, so got that foot done, just about. Moving on up the leg. And of all the processes and techniques that I know how to do, this is the one that is probably hardest on the brushes by itself without, without me being stupid about it. This is the one that actually like kind of tears at them a little. Just because you have to kind of press the bristles into strange positions. And if some of this should happen to not be fully dry, I think that's actually pretty okay. Because particularly up top, I would like to have the colors vary a little bit as I travel across the model. Yeah, we need some more. Let's get some more paint. We'll start out on this end, as we did on the other side. I'm actually pretty excited to get the gold onto this guy. That's going to look real neat. So for the uninitiated, dry brushing is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. You take your brush, you put some paint in it, all the paint you like, fill it all up, and then get rid of almost all of it, leaving your brush nearly dry, but not actually cleaned of the pigment that you put into it. So when you dry brush over a model, when you take the brush that you've done that to, rub it over the model, much like a charcoal rubbing or a crayon rubbing or whatever, only the raised portions get any color, which lets you do highlights without changing the color of your shadows. And it still leaves a bunch of the base coat as well. So the shadows are typically done with washes because that gets into all the little cracks, and highlights are typically done this way through dry brushing. Ooh, yeah, his face is still a little bit A little bit wet. Not a ton. Not enough that it's going to stop me, because I'm a little bit silly about these things, as it turns out. Well, that's looking good around his chest, though. Probably going to want to hit that with a little bit of extra black, assuming that I don't use the strong tone on it. If I do use the strong tone, I highly doubt there'll be any need for cleaning that up manually. Alright, so there's that color on. Again, not a huge difference, but you're just going to start to see him get a little bit more defined. And then we're going to give it one more coat of dry brushing of like a very, very pale yellow. And we're going to be very, very sparse with that, very little. It's going to be thin, it's going to be barely on there really, but there is going to be a tiny, tiny bit. It's going to be the same as our highlight color that we just used, this leather brown, but I am going to add some white to it. Actually, I'm going to be stupid and forget to shake my white paint. And just get mostly medium instead. Let's clean that out. Pretend that never happened. There we go. That's better. A little more white on that. Just mixing this up by hand real quick. That's actually a lot more white. Whoops. Don't mind me, I'm just over here committing a couple of cardinal sins of paint mixing. Don't let the paint get into the ferrule. Do as I say, not as I do, everyone. Remember that. It's going to be our mantra for the night. I have an intellectual knowledge of actually a fair amount of painting techniques, and I am no good at any of them. I'm very unpracticed. And everything that comes with that trait. Ooh, that's too much. That's way too much. Let's clean that up. Alright, so when that dries up, it should be okay. That should undo the damage. No problem. And in the meantime, we will also be drying out the brush again, so that we can actually do the rest of this. Okay, give it a try. Yeah, that's good. That helps. there's very, very little paint on the brush at this point. Like, even by what I've come to know as normal dry brushing, even by that standard, this is not very much paint. Because we want to be very careful about how and where, and especially how much, we apply this. It is really going to highlight things. Boot is going to have a couple of places that are a little bit more bright than I had otherwise intended. But I think, just between you guys and me, I think you will survive. I think he just might pull through. Let's get going on one of these leg bits. One that isn't still wet from the last time I screwed it up. Yeah, that's in good shape. It's looking good. Yeah, I'm liking how this is pulling together. It's looking pretty good. I like it. I like him. Boot is good. And he is getting, little at a time, better. I'm having a little bit of trouble wrangling his feet still. I just don't quite want to be as consistently colored as I want them to be. I think that's okay. Like, I don't think it's going to really matter too much, but it is kind of a pet peeve. Let's get a little bit more of this on his head, or shoulders actually. That's one of the areas that we want to be a little bit lighter. Not a ton, just a little. Just channeling whatever inner Bob Ross I have left in me. Alright. Not that you can really see it, but how does that look? Yeah, I definitely need to darken that black out in his chest. Doesn't look right. Correction, it doesn't look right yet. I think his mouth is okay, although I'm still going to darken it up anyway. Let's grab up just a touch of the black paint. Try and get it into those cracks without ruining everything that I just did. I'm continually amazed that I'm able to keep my hand so steady with this. It's is actually a little bit shaky right now. The lines are still going on relatively smooth, which is... I don't know about you guys, but I'm impressed with myself. Let's give him a little bit of dental surgery here, make sure that his mouth is properly horrific and gaping. Glad you like it. In case this wasn't apparent from the context, this is Jession's mini for a Gloomhaven game. This is his character. Boot Craghart. And I appreciate Boot. He gets to be painfully reckless. And I don't feel like I'm the only one. Alright, this is getting a little bit better. I need a little bit more pigment in there. I'm deathly afraid of it just slopping everywhere. This is a very hard color to clean up after. You know, being truly black and all that. Okay, almost got these all figured out. Just about right. Nice. Let me clean that up, and you should see a significant... Yeah, well, I've actually noticed everybody kind of does a little bit of everything. It's mostly a matter of what you're good at that's of interest. So, yeah, should be able to see that crevice a little bit better, that crag. But, yeah, I do appreciate your ranged AoEs. They let me get in with my ranged AoEs without instantly dying. So his knuckles are a little bit white, because I just slightly overdid them with the highlight tone. But other than that, I'm not really seeing anything that I have a problem with here, which is itself awesome. It's one of these projects, like, I kind of expect to have more trouble with it than I do sometimes. And, thank goodness for that. Okay. So, let's see. Want some thin gray. So we'll do 1 drop white, 1 drop black, and then 2, maybe even 3 drops of thinner. Now, acrylic thinner, technically, many big rocks get thrown, yeah. Yeah, it's true. I've lost my train of thought. What was I just saying? Yeah, no, it's gone. I'll get back to you later if I figure out what I was trying to say. 1, 2, 3. Oh yes, the acrylic thinner. Acrylic thinner, technically speaking, is just water, because its carrier agent is literally just water. So normally, acrylic paints are thinned with just distilled water. You can use tap water, but don't, because it's actually a little bit more gross than you would think, in terms of like the surface consistency that it gives you. There's like tiny bits of sediment in it, which is normal and completely healthy to drink, but it's not so good for the surface of a finely detailed mini. So you'd usually just thin these with distilled water on a wet palette, or even not on a wet palette, just distilled water. But that doesn't give you the advantages of longer working time or better flow. So a lot of people will recommend, like, oh, just toss in a drop or 2 of dish soap. Good night, Scarlet Swordfish. Thank you for joining. Hope this wasn't too boring for somebody used to watching video game footage. But I'm glad you were here, so thank you for attending. We're going to get this loincloth going a little bit. We're going to start with a lighter color, and then I'm going to go back in something darker so that its highlights look a little bit weird. That is intentional, sort of. It's probably a little bit lighter than I wanted, but not by enough that I need to do too much to change it. You're gonna wash it pretty heavily, though, as I mentioned. We, of course, have to be pretty careful with this because we're putting the areas next to it at risk. So we do need to be very cautious about how we paint this groinial region of his. Kind of reminds me of the rocks from FTL. Not so much the silicoids in battle stations, because they're literally just rocks. They're not even like rock people, they're just rocks. But the rocks and the crystals look pretty similar to this to me. You know, for just over an hour's progress, this isn't half bad. The way this is coming along. We're actually looking quite good for that amount of time. Let's see, where is actually the edge of this thing? Kind of hard to tell where this ends and his leg begins. So it does look a little bit like a diaper right now, but we're gonna fix that. Because I don't want it to look like a diaper, because that's weird. That is weird by the standards of someone who noticed that Krug in Heroescape has a diaper on. It's fine. Everything's fine. Alright. Let's keep going on this side. Looks like it comes down a little ways, but not very far. And this is going to be lined with gold bits, of course. Oh, there was a little bit of a contour there that I didn't see. Gonna try and get some of the paint off of that. It's not going to be a huge problem if I can't, but it would definitely be preferable to clear it out. Get out of there. Paint that I do not want. Get out. And once that water dries, then we'll be fine. Well, that spot is just a touch weird, though. Let's see. Let's get some of this dark brown back in there just to cover that tiny little spot a little bit. That's fine. Staring at it very closely under a magnifying glass, you could probably find a particular spot on his hip that just looks a little weird, but you know what? I don't think we're going to care when it comes time to actually play with this. And that is me, Captain Perfectionist, saying that, so that must mean it really doesn't matter, right? That's how that works, isn't it? Never mind that this isn't my character or anything. Just right up into the belt there. Almost got it. There we go. Okay. Alright, so there he's got his little loincloth bit going on there. A little bit around the hips, not much, but a little. Of course, we're going to weather that down to more of a gray-brown, but that's where we're starting. And let's see, I need one of my cheap, crappy brushes to get some of the paint into the middle to mix. So I'm going to start from this. And add in a little bit of our dark brown. Getting closer, a little more. Yeah, that's just about right. That's a good color for this. And again, I am, of course, quite the scrub when it comes to this sort of thing, so I don't have a wet palette handy, so I'm going to have to do this real fast before that thin coat dries up. And I run out of this paint color entirely. Just get this in there. Go, go, go. Faster, please. Okay, come on. Less diaper, more rotten hides. Same difference, I guess, in a setting like this. And this is exactly what that time extender does. Gloomhaven. I am indeed painting his butt. Welcome to the stream, Mel. I am trying to correct the fact that I put him in a diaper. Because it really looked very diaperish for a minute there. It's not terrible right now, but it's still not where I want it to be. I cannot hear your animu. Even butts need to be painted sometimes, yes. Else they are simply plastic. Alright, and then that ink wash that we used before, we're going to be using that again. It's not actually ink. I don't know why I said that. But now that this has the base color that we want, we're going to just give it a bit of a once-over with this stuff. We're going to do this front first, then back. And then we're going to do the sides, one at a time. And the reason for that is that we are not going to have it sitting up like this while it dries, because that'll draw it all to the bottom. What we're going to do is have it on its back and front and then sides. So we're going to start this way. Once we get all of this on here, that is. Just a little bit more. We're going to have him sitting like this. Indeed, it is boot. I don't know how to show it to you guys while it's doing this without having it at an angle that will be bad. So I'm just going to blow on it like hot soup and pretend that that makes a significant difference. Yes, I was painting the booty of boot. That is correct. Unfortunately, I can't really do much with this while it's drying. I just need to have it kind of sitting like this. He's gonna lay down for a minute. Hoopadoo, 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 padoo. I'm gonna have to check the VOD, make sure it doesn't get muted. Apparently my actual stream hasn't gotten muted. I don't know, I've been researching how like non-royalty free music works on Twitch. And I guess they recently changed their policy and it's a little bit draconian from what I understand, but we'll see what happens to me in particular. Hopefully nothing. So I don't think I have a license to the Runayod CDs. Probably. But on the other hand, quite honestly, I don't think anyone on this continent knows Fartuna except me. How are we doing? Is this gonna spill everywhere if I change the direction? Yep, still is. Back to blowing on the model like an idiot. Okay, that should be sufficient. Only barely, of course, but that's all we need. What we'll do is back. The booty of the boot, if you prefer. Gotta get this in all the places we need it. We do want a little bit sitting up on the surface, but most of it needs to go down into the crevices. The places between folds of the cloth. And under his butt. I need as much there as possible, because that's supposed to be in shadow. Because no one wants to see that boot. Almost got it. Need a little more. I'm sure this part of the process is absolutely riveting. You get to watch me prodding at a diaper. And then we get to watch paint dry. So I am actually really looking forward to getting to the gold bit. Oh, excuse me. Because when we do the gold portions, what that's going to end up looking like is it's going to suddenly add a lot of contrast, a lot of visual interest, and we're going to get to see something get all shiny. Pardon the loud blowing noises. I'm already annoyed by them and I'm not even watching. Alright, so we still need to do the sides of the loincloth, but that's how he's looking so far. Come on, give me the white balance, please. Which is actually not too far off of its concept art, which I'm pretty proud of. I think it's coming along really well. Alright, so now... So I don't think... Yeah, let's get those edges done. And then once we've finished that, I'm not sure that I want to do anything else with the loincloth. I think that's actually pretty good where it is. I might go over it with like a little bit of dry brushing, just to highlight it a tiny bit. I'm not sure if I want to do that because it's actually, like, I'm pretty happy with the color of it, and I don't want to change that even if I do want to change the texture. So, don't know how to get the one changed without getting the other changed as well. And these, we're going to do a little bit lighter. I tell you what, you don't realize how weird this figure's backside looks. Doesn't really sink in until you actually paint him. And it's like, what the heck? Why are you so strange looking, Boot? Why are you so weird? Come on, Boot, why? Yeah, we might dry brush that, I'm really not sure. But before we even look at that, we're gonna get some red going for his eyes. We're gonna do this very sparingly. We literally only need one drop, and that's enough for at least 2 colors that we're gonna mix of this. We'll grab a little bit more leather brown. And a little bit more white. And that's going to establish the color of his eyes. And we literally need like half a drop of each of these colors, maybe. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to take the highlight color that we used for his main body, so like the lightest portions of him, generally. And then we're going to take that, mix it with red. We're going to paint the straight red onto his eyes first, and we're going to deliberately overpaint just a tiny little bit so that he has like not just red eyes, or like the yellow in his eyes, but he's gonna have a slight red glow around them. And don't mind me, I'm just mixing this up. Straight bread, what does that mean? I'm very confused. What does straight bread mean? No, I think what you might have heard is me saying straight red regarding the color that we're going to paint onto his eyes, and I should not use this brush for that. Whoops. It's the wrong tool for the job. Need something a bit smaller. So we're going to pull out the 10-0 brush, which is eensy weensy. Come on, focus in. There it is. No, that's my hand. You need to look at the brush, right in the middle there. Come on, there it is. So that you saw for a split second, that is my 10-0 brush, my main one at least. I've got a couple. And that is what we're going to use to get his eyeballs on. This is going to be pretty thin paint. It's good because we don't want to cover up what else we've done to his face. We want to add just a little bit of like a red highlight to that area. We don't actually want his eyes to be red, we just want the area around them to have just a slight sort of haze of that color. All right. Ah! Oh, actually, you can see that pretty okay if it decides to focus in. Oh, come on, please. Please. Camera, please. You're killing me here. Okay, so now we will add in the red to the yellow color that I mixed a bit ago. That all blended up. I'll actually grab a little bit of this from earlier. Mix that in. Well, unless it doesn't want to, that's fine. That all off the brush. Tiny brush, yeah. That's the third smallest brush. That is not even close to the actual smallest, which is small. Take a guess what I did with most of the Twilight Imperium ships with. Yeah, that's actually looking pretty nice. Still need a little bit more yellow to it. It's not going to be hard to do at all. Because got our leather brown, we're going to add a little bit of that. We're going to add a little bit more white. And this time we're going to use more than half a drop so that I don't have to scrounge for it. Not a ton more than half a drop, of course. That would just be wasteful when we're literally only using one brush full of the 10-0 to even do this with. But that's fine. It's fine. Okay, got that in there, and then this is a little bit too thin, so hopefully that'll help even things up in terms of the tone of the paint color that we're using. Clean the brush out, just so that we don't get paint everywhere. And then we'll fix up those eyeballs. Alright, got our proper eye color, which is actually sort of fleshy, now that I'm noticing. Oh, that's pretty good, yeah. Nice. Come on, actually show up. There we go. I think I would have preferred it to be just a little bit more like actively red, but I don't see how I could have done that without sort of overwhelming the color of the rest of the face. As it stands, it'll be a nice detail for those that look close enough to see it. Now, let's see. The last two things to do are to get the highlight color dry brushed onto the hide, the lovely little loincloth. We're going to actually add a little bit of leather brown to the gray that we initially mixed for that. It's going to kind of be our unifying color that ties his whole color scheme together. And that's actually also going to help it blend in with the surrounding areas of his body. And I'm not actually going to add any more of the diluting agent thinner. I'm going to leave it how it is. And let's just make sure there's a tiny bit more white in there. Yeah, perfect. And we'll grab our dry brush. And dry out said dry brush. A little more. And we'll do a little less of that. That's a little much. It's a nice gray, though. Yeah, that looks good. Really makes it pop out. Yeah, so it's a little more than I would have liked on the front, but not enough that I think it's a problem. That's that area just about done. If I can make my camera focus on it, please. Honestly, when I show this off at the end, I'm just turning autofocus off. Alright. Now, the part of the show that you have all been waiting for. We start messing around with gold paint. And Vallejo Colors does a really interesting thing with their metallic paints, gold included, and that's that they use actual flakes of that metal in their paint. Which gives it a very, what's the right word, verisimilistic? That's not even a word. A very accurate, real feel. I am not done with Boot. Boot needs a bunch of help still. Because Boot's belt, Boot's shoulders, Boot's wrists, and Boot's knees all need to be blinged out. And like, seriously blinged to crap. So 1, 2, 3, and also 1, 2 drops there. Okay. Pat, 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 pat. Oh, the paint, yeah. Sorry, you're at a little bit of a delay, so sometimes I don't know what the heck you're talking about. One drop of white, one heavy drop, so we'll call that our 1.5 drops. And then we will thin them down. We'll make sure that these are a little bit thicker than I would do the other colors, because this gold paint does tend to apply a little bit better when there's more of it. And I'm impatient and don't like doing multiple coats. Even though that's the way you really ought to do it. Do as I say, not as I do. Like, for heaven's sake, don't paint like I paint. Oh wow, that's too much white. fix it later when I am ready to use that color. Might be okay. Okay, got that guy all mixed. Alrighty. Now we get to do the fun part. These gold paints, or metallics in general, are really fiddly, but they look gorgeous once they're all the way on. Look really, really lovely. I should actually probably undercoat these areas. Too late. Let's see. Yes, I am going to undercoat these. I should have done that first, and I didn't think about it, which was dumb. That's okay. Just have to wipe up some paint out of my my little tray here. And we're going to actually undercoat this with yellow, a very light yellow, because the art that I'm trying to match has a very bright gold. I mean, like, even just with one coat, it's already like one partial coat to this area, it's already like blinding bright. Oh, come on. Yeah. So already we're noticeably closer in on that. Let's see, what yellow do I need though? Sorry, 1 second while I consult my color guide. Number 5, Moon Yellow. That's what we're going with. 1, 2, 3, 4, that one. Okay. Yeah, that should be perfect. Pat, 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 pat. Okay. I'll do 3 drops of that, and that should easily get us through what we're doing here. I'll set this out so I can photograph it later. And we'll thin it. 1, 2. Now, of course, yellow especially is really, really not a hiding color. Pretty much no commercially available yellow pigments are, like, they don't hide well. They just don't. But that's okay, because we are using this as a base coat for something that is more opaque. So if we were actually just painting it yellow, what we'd probably want to do is paint over it with a thicker white first, and then run over it again with the yellow probably 2, maybe 3 times, because yellow is just not a pigment that likes to stick. Now this is going to look real hideous for a couple minutes while I put this yellow down. And while that is the case, please bear with me. Pardon our dust, as the construction signs so often say. Also, I'm not entirely sure, but I think this guy's pauldrons might be, like, stapled into his skin somehow. Kind of weird. Alright. hair got stuck to my brush. That's not where that goes. Ooh, that's a little bit too close. Get the paint out of that little crevice that it's gotten itself into that it doesn't belong. Alright, now we can continue. Yeah, we might even want 2 coats of this base color. I'm not sure. I think I probably won't. But that's probably more because I'm lazy than because it's the right thing to do. Okay, so we got the inside of the pauldron done, as well as the outside. That's good. Now this other pauldron, which is not spiky, but which has a taller shoulder bit on it. That all horrifically yellow. Yeah, if I wanted it to stay this yellow color, I would definitely need to undercoat it with white. Like, that would be an absolute requirement in order to achieve the color that this is supposed to produce. And just for clarity, we're not using this color because this is necessarily like the right way to do golds, but just because I want it to have like a really exaggerated yellow effect under it before I paint on the actual gold. I just want it to look a little bit extra, as it were. Just a little bit more of this garish color compared to the rest of his color scheme, which is a lot more muted, earthy, and mundane. So just to make it really pop out compared to the rest of him. Of course, some places are going to get a lot more of the pigment than others, and there's not really anything I can necessarily do much about. There is not much I can do about that. That's the phrase I was trying for. So of course the gold paint hides a bit better than this, as in it will cover over the colors below it a little bit more thoroughly, but also it doesn't hide completely. It's got pretty good coverage for metallic paint especially, but it's not like it's going to be completely opaque, especially not thinned the way that I've done. So we may even want to give it 2 coats of gold before we do highlighting. Not sure about that. I definitely don't want to, because that's a pain. That is a pain in my patootie, and I don't want to do it. But it may give us the effect we want. We'll have to see. I'll have to put down the first layer and see how it looks. Based on that pauldron that I did halfway, I think we'll be fine with just 1 coat. I do need to be pretty careful with this yellow. Anywhere that the yellow turns up, we have to put gold over it, because otherwise it's just going to look like this in certain spots. And that, quite frankly, won't do at all. So that just there was me cleaning off some paint that I didn't want where it was. We may need to do that another few times, we'll see. Now, I don't think anyone specifically asked, but just for clarity, the reason that I've got him attached to this pill bottle is that you don't want to have your hands on the model while you're painting it. I often have in the past, and sometimes that's been fine, and other times it's actually been a serious problem for the overall quality of the piece. So this is just better practice generally, even if you are being relatively careful with it. and is a thing that you should do if you are painting your own minis at home. Got a little overzealous there. Let's pull some of that off. Want it along the edge of his knee pad, not all the way up his leg. Yeah, that's better. So one problem with this this yellow paint that I'm using, and with a lot of yellow paints in my experience actually, is that when they're too thin, they're really hard to wrangle and get where you want them to go, and only there. But if you don't thin them out, their coverage is really crappy, they don't flow properly, they're really hard to control, they get just kind of chalky and gross. And that's not what we want. So thinning is required, but then controlling the paint once it's thinned, because they start off so thin anyway, just gets to be a bit of a chore. Metallic paints in this line, at least, have sort of an opposite problem, which is that they're quite thick and quite clumpy, because, you know, of course their pigment is actual metal, so it's understandable they would have this problem. Oh, come on now, get on there. Okay, it's going to be really hard to do without it getting into the turquoise bits, so I might have to repaint those. In fact, I will probably have to repaint those based on how this is going so far. This is a very awkward angle. Yeah, I think I'm going to need to repaint those inside bits. Not going to go out of my way to paint into them, though. Oh, crap. Yeah, that one went all over the place. That's not good. Let's fix that real quick. Oh, geez, if I can. Get out of there, you. It's not the color that spot's supposed to be. Oof, yeah, that made a bit of a mess. Alright, now we just have to do this side. So the art doesn't actually show this funky belt that he's got going on from any angle except the front center, which makes it a little hard to tell where these gold lines are supposed to be. It looks like there should be a few lines on either side, but there's only places for 2 of them. Not to mention, again, really hard to wrangle this yellow paint. Might have to just let that side look a little turquoise. so that's our yellow pre-coat done. Positively blinding. Oh, come on now. You can do it. You can do it, camera. Just notice all those lines that I'm trying to get you to focus on, please. Come on. The blinged boot. Well, he's not blinged yet. Right now he's just really gross looking. The next thing to do is actually bling him. Well, once I fix that bit of turquoise that got all screwy. Which we will need to pour more turquoise paint for. So that has dried out just a bit more than I can use. Okay. Let us set down boot and get the paint dealt with. Out of there. The paint has stained my palette. No surprise there. For some reason, blues, like blue and green colors, seem to do that more than anything else. Lost my toothpick. Come back. Come back. Okay, everything's fine. Alright. A little bit more foul green. Shouldn't need much of that at all. Okay. Thinned and mixed. Check. Riveting stream, right? Just staring at my desk here. Did I nudge the camera? I think I nudged the camera. Let's fix that. Just get this turquoise fixed. Back how it's supposed to be. A little bit of yellow still in there that doesn't belong. Let's see if I can get rid of that. Oh gosh, that's already dry. Okay. Cool, let's paint over it. That makes things easy. And in case anyone's wondering, I have absolutely no idea what I'm listening to right now. I think I know what band it's by. No, we're still listening to what are they called? It's gone out of my brain already. Oh, that didn't take long at all. Yeah, no, I don't know who this is. Let me look. It is Virgina, right? Yep, definitely haven't been listening to this the entire time. I'm definitely not that kind of crazy, am I? Okay, so that's a little bit better. Let's see if we can fix this without making the mess any bigger. Alright. Okay. So that's the turquoise fixed. Time to bling properly. Start back up here with these pauldrons again. And it's still going to be this egregious yellow color, but it's going to be shiny. And a little bit less of that egregious color. It's going to be a little bit more actual gold. Yeah, the undercoat helped. It's showing a lot better. And we will be dry brushing over this as well. But we will not be washing it. So it's going to have fewer shadows in it and more focus on the highlights. There will, of course, still be some shadows, but that's like real light doing that, not the illusion brought on by paint. Alright, come on. Just get the paint into the right places. Up here, particularly and around the belt, are going to be a little bit of trouble, I'd imagine. So this paint's a little bit hard to wrangle in tight spots like this. And it does thicken up a little bit faster than most of the other colors that I use. So that is something to be aware of. We may have to rethin it before we're done here. I hope not, because that really sort of sucks to do. But hopefully... Now this pauldron over here is really smooth, so it is having a little bit of trouble sticking. This paint is having a little bit of trouble sticking compared to on the other side. And the yellow paint sort of did the same thing, except that it just puddled everywhere, which I'm sure didn't help. That underneath. I swear this pauldron is like stapled into his shoulder. It's very uncomfortable. Right, now we'll do the inside and the top. Another problem that I've had with this is that even though it gives really good coverage and has a lovely color, it tends to gum up the brush a bit. I don't really know how to solve that problem without like diluting it past the point of being an effective paint. Which I have tried, actually. It doesn't really help. It fixes this issue, but it changes it out for a bunch of worse stuff. So... something I gotta live with, I suppose. I'm glad this undercoat helped as much as I hoped it would. It's looking pretty nice. soon you shall see the true blinged boot. But we're not there yet. Even with this, we're still not there yet. He needs real bling. He needs highlighting. He needs to be fancy, in addition to rich looking. Boot bling, the blinged boot. It's almost where I want it, just a little bit more. I think I overdid his right arm. Not by much, but just a little bit. Let's get his left wrist done. That's going on pretty nice, good. That's a lot of paint. Got a little bit much on the brush there. Okay. So there's that part. Gotta do a little bit more on here because that's still showing a little bit grody yellow-green. It says lunar, but it's really more green. And I mean, everybody knows how green the moon is all the time. Let's get these knee pads properly done up. And then we will move on to the really hard part, that stupid belt. I think that's probably going to be the real challenge with this mini, is getting that belt looking decent. The blingy boot belt, if you will. And unfortunately for the stream, I'm not amazing at doing detail work and talking at the same time. But I'll try. Okay. Okay, let's clean the brush, get it degummed as much as possible. Okay, do we have enough of this that's still usable? Yes, it looks like we should. Alright. Let's do this bonkers belt. I want to try it up to the point of being just a tiny bit sticky, which is not great. Okay, come on. Yeah, this is absolutely the hard part right here. These sections of the piece are too big and too awkwardly placed to use the smallest brushes. So I actually have to use something like this in order to get at them in the first place, and it's too big and unwieldy. Using this particular paint for that particular part is also kind of suboptimal, just because of how tacky it gets. There's that. And I might even need to re-turquoise this a third time. Get this right. Yes, there might be like a little bit of a mess here. I don't think it's going to matter once it's in a tabletop setting, but looking at it up close like this is a little bit like, I don't like it. Don't like that I make mistakes. Stupid being a human person. Alright. Stage 1 of the blingening is nearly done. Just gotta do this other side. Maybe clean up a couple mistakes. I'm not sure if they're worth it or not. I know you guys won't be able to see them on the stream because they're like literally too physically small for the camera to grab them. I do need tweezers because a little hair got stuck on this. Get out of there. Get off of my piece. Okay. So now that that's clear, back to actually painting the thing. Okay. Now just 2 more lines of this belt. There's 1. And a half. Two. Okay. So blingening stage 1 is complete. Yeah. Proper blinged. Now that that is done, it's time for the blingening stage 2, bling harder, in which I make a colossal mess for absolutely no reason, and maybe have to mix more paint. Let's fix that real quick. Okay. Okay, half a drop of white this time. Should mix out just about evenly with what I already had there. The best armor is golden armor when you're made out of rock anyway. I agree with you there. Okay, let's mix that up again. Now that there is sufficient gold paint to actually make it look gold. Maybe. This is a huge waste of pigment for the fact that I'm only dry brushing this. Ooh, using up so much. So much paint. Yeah, I'll live. we're talking about the single drops anyway, so it's not so bad. It just feels bad when I know I'm not going to use it. Alright, a little more gold. That needs at least one more drop. Part of the problem is that I used up quite a bit of one of my golds on my Twilight Imperium gold fleet. Like, a lot of that color. So I'm kind of trying not to waste too much of the rest. There we go, that's the right color. And we will be brushing this on with a very dry brush. A dry brush for the Mario fans out there. Because we want very, very little of this going onto the model. Highlights only, and the smallest highlights at that. Start with the Belt of Evil. Not a dire brush. You know, if I had a license to play that music, it would be playing right now. On account of it is one of my favorite tracks in Mario 64. And on that list, it is in my top however many tracks there are in Mario 64, because that game's soundtrack is the best. So his left pauldron is going to be where most of this actually ends up sitting, because that's the spot with the most highlighted raised areas. So I've got to be a little bit cautious about how much goes on here. Alrighty. And with that, I do believe Boot is just about finished. And I'm really liking him, actually. I think he looks really good. I'm gonna show him off first, clean my brushes later. So, let's change the autofocus here. Turn that off. Full macro. Dun dun. Ah. We actually want it focused to here. Nice. So here we have Boot the Blinged. Light better, please. Let me see if I can fix that lighting. Oh, about there. Okay, and let's see, there is... Ah! I know, let me knock him directly into the paints. That's perfect. Set him up here for now. Good grief. That was close to a disaster. Let's see, where's the handle for this thing? Boot is boot. Throw. So sorry, I'm trying to get better lighting onto the other side of my camera setup real quick. And I don't have a ton of options for that, but I can do this to make it a little bit more bright and be blinged. Yeah, that white balance is still completely wrong. Let me set that back to auto and see if it handles any better. Yeah, that's better. How's he look? Any requests for detail changes or anything like that? Or is this satisfactory? He is, after all, not my character. Kind of fuzzy. Look, I'm trying, okay? The autofocus just does not want to play nice with close-up shots. Reattach all this nonsense. For a 2-hour paint job, that is not bad. Was that supposed to be an emoji, or were you just going for the word blaze? There we go. Okay, cool. Just making sure. Alright, so just as a matter of course, what we're gonna do for cleanup, I'm not gonna worry about cleaning up the palette during the stream. I think that's a little bit pointless, but I will be grabbing a little bit of clean water here. I'll clean up the brushes and get those in good shape while we kind of debrief as a group. Is this something that you guys would like to continue to watch? Is this watchable in any capacity? Was it interesting? Is it good? Did I have anything useful to say? Did you care? And also, perhaps more importantly, do you want me to do more of these streams in the future? Because I actually really enjoyed this. This was a good excuse to actually get something done for once. And not just that, but to get going on a project that I've had in mind for a while, and a good opportunity to kind of keep some momentum on it, get something start to finished. I'm glad to hear it. So in that case, what are we doing next? Difficult to pay attention, how do you mean? Just that you didn't stay engaged consistently? Because if so, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. This is just a very long process. I don't think there's any... I don't think I could ask an audience to just be laser focused on this the whole time, even if they were looking to learn specific techniques. Because this is just very slow. Like that's not... I don't think that's even really anything specific to this stream. It's just a slow thing to do. So that is completely understandable, and honestly, I wouldn't even be the faintest bit offended if you had something else on while we do this. Just depending on whether you care about my commentary. If it's something you just want to watch, like having it on one screen while you do something else would not be in any way offensive, because honestly it is super boring just to sit and watch and do nothing else at the same time. So, you can't join tomorrow. Okay, well, that's unfortunate, but that is alright. Is what it is. Get in the tube, brush. So what about future painting streams? If we continue doing this, what sorts of projects do you guys want me to keep to do? There were 3 votes on the poll, 1 for Battle Stations, 1 for Gloomhaven, and 1 for Mice and Mystics. I feel pretty comfortable in the assumption that Jesse on said Battle Stations on account of it's his minis. And I do want to do those on or off stream. I still want to get those done. Good grief, excuse me. But I don't have any specific timetable for it, and I have already done all the ones that I feel really confident with. Okay, so 1 vote for finishing Gloomhaven. I do also have, as I mentioned in the poll, a few other like side projects. Like there's a single figure, a dragon from Shifting Realms that I could do in an evening. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I figured like starting this is probably going to kind of commit me to it, and that's okay. I sort of expected that to be the case, and I think this will be a good project to go on for a while. I am actually looking forward to coming back to painting miniatures semi-regularly. I've really enjoyed that when I've done it in the past. So my hope is that I can kind of use this as an excuse to keep doing it on the regular. Okay, so that's those cleared up. Alright, that's the brushes done. That and that are garbage. And from there, I believe we're done for the night. I'll go out and dull coat this guy up. And that is at least being played somewhat actively. Yeah, that was kind of my thinking. Is in the event of a 3-way tie, let's do the only one we're actually playing. So we can kind of enjoy these a little bit more actively than the other ones. Obviously, I will be doing more of that kind of thing for my other games, and also here's the others. There's the Mind Thief down there. Sorry for the noise of the camera shifting around. There's these 4. Let me get this back where it goes. Right about there. Okay. Alright. So let's stop the music. Alright. Alrighty. So, actually, one other thing before we are done. That is this. Wait, no, that's not right. Put that into the wrong scene. Sorry, hold on just a second. I didn't actually think this through. Surprise, surprise. just for the sake of comparison. Obviously bearing in mind that the lighting on this side is a little bit bad. How did I do? I did pretty okay. Nice. Thanks, guys. I appreciate the praise. I wasn't fishing for it, but I'm glad to receive it anyway. So, alright, with that, have a great evening. I'll be back tomorrow, and I guess let me know on Twitter which figure you want me to work on next, because we've got some options. And I'll be back with that project next time.